welcome to another new episode of Tinfoil Tales. I'm your host, Brandon. Tonight we're going to have a different type of episode here for you. We're going to be joined by my guests, PJ and Abby from Conspiracy Pill Podcast. We're going to dive into a lot of different topics. So if you're into conspiracies or things going on, you may want to take a listen. Make sure you check out Conspiracy Pill Podcast. You can find it on all the streaming platforms and Rumble. But before we jump into that, if you've ever had an encounter and you'd like to be on an episode of Tinfoil Tales, you can send me an email. Send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com. We'll get you scheduled on a future episode. We are on all of the socials, so make sure to go to Facebook, Instagram, X, give us a like and follow. If you're on YouTube, make sure you check out the videos, leave us some comments. If there's any topics that you would like for me to discuss, make sure to let me know how I can look into things for you guys. I have an upcoming paranormal convention that I'll be at, Paraunity 5 in Miami County, Indiana. It's on October 21st, so if you would like to come out to that, it'd be appreciated because there will be a lot of cool vendors out there, a lot of different research groups. Be out there myself. I'll have the book out there. Come talk to me. If you have a story to like to share, we can record it while you're sitting there with me. Whatever you want to do, be awesome. But we're going to go ahead now and jump into discussions with PJ and Abby. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I'd like to take this time to welcome my guests tonight, PJ and Abby. Thanks for coming out and talking with me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Appreciate it. Now, you guys are from Conspiracy Pill Podcast. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Abby, tell them what we're about.
Oh, we're a podcast that tries to get people about high strangeness. We talk about conspiracy. We talk about anything weird that's kind of what people like to accept as true about reality.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
That's kind of what this one's about. I interview people that have experiences with things they can't explain, and we have some that deal with conspiracies, and we have things that deal with aliens and cryptids and kind of anything that's got that weird tinfoil hat story to. That's why I got the whole Tinfoil Tales name, because it's the stories that people are afraid to tell someone, because then you're going to be known as one of those weird tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy people.
In my experience, I think every person alive has one of those stories that they don't want to tell, and that's why I find it fun if you ever like get someone just talking to them. They'll either have a ghost story or a cryptid story or a UFO or a high strangeness thing. So I feel like it's just one of those, it's not culturally accepted, but everybody kind of knows that this stuff is real.
Yeah.
It's my thought anyway.
I feel like it's becoming more acceptable in the last few years, and I don't know if it's from podcasting, from all these documentaries, or what it is, but I see a lot more people driving around with like Sasquatch Bigfoot stickers on the back of their vehicles now. I see UFO stickers on stuff. Like 15, 20 years ago, you didn't see anything like that. So it's kind of interesting that more people are at least embracing it. I don't know if they were necessarily a believer, but they're at least slapping a sticker on there about it.
I guess. Go ahead, Abby.
There's more people believing in Bigfoot and UFOs, but there's also more people embracing everything spiritual, the occult, witchcraft is on the rise, all that sort of stuff.
I was supposed to have someone come on recently to talk about demonology. They claim they're a demonologist, and I don't know how one becomes a demonologist, but they were going to explain all that to me, and that didn't end up happening. It was one of those instances where the guest disappears, like the ghost that they talk about. But
I have friends who have taken demonology courses in college, so I know they must exist. But I get this strange feeling like most people just read a lot of things online and call themselves a demonologist. Is there a degree in it? I don't know.
I've always wondered, like, people say they're a cryptozoologist and they're a demonologist and they're all these things. Like, do you have to take classes to become that, or can someone just start calling themselves that because they think they have enough knowledge on the topic of whatever it is that they're a knowledgeist of?
It's fair.
It's probably more the second one. It does seem like there are like mini courses in demonology, but just from a quick Google search, I don't think there's like a degree in it anywhere. So be cool to get one though, right? It'd be something to hang on a wall.
a lady that I just interviewed recently, and her episode came out a couple weeks ago, was about psychokinesis, and she is at a university and she's doing like parapsychology and stuff like that. So this is actually something that they do and they get credited for the certain things that like they look into, but this is actually part of her real job. Is she works for the university, but this is like a thing that they go out and they do. So I guess when they had like seances and stuff like that, it was for studying how people reacted and how people's minds work to see if there's actually like entities doing it or if someone's manifesting it from their own energies. Weird topics, but it's interesting that some schools are actually out looking into this type of stuff.
You said a minute ago about how like now it seems like people are a lot more comfortable talking about aliens and UFOs and Bigfoot and all these different things. I think I get the feeling like it's two things. I think one of them is like it's been a little bit more, well, maybe it's three things. One, it's probably been a little bit more normalized through podcasting. Two, I feel like it's just there's so many things that have happened that it's kind of hard to ignore, especially as we've seen like everybody's got an Alex Jones was right jar. So like that kind of helps. And then, but I wonder if a lot of people just now feel comfortable talking about it because the government has kind of told them it's okay, which is the worst kind of, I think that's the worst kind of conspiracy theorist to be like, oh, the government told us that UFOs are real. So now I'm allowed to now I'm allowed to believe, which is pretty interesting. But I bet that's like a third of the population.
I think it's funny that they're talking about UFOs, obviously, from these hearings and this and that.
Mhm.
And mainstream public, from what I've been seeing, like no one even talks about it to an extent. Like they're all like, yep, UFOs, whatever. Do you see what's going on over here? Like it's so not important to the average person these days that it's like it's not even a big deal. It's like it's wrote off at this point. Like it's in the background. They're like, yeah, well, we know there's been aliens for all these years, but we want to know where the Epstein list is.
I want to know both. I don't know why it's I think it's a false binary. I said this a few years ago where I said, I think they're going to normalize aliens at such a slow rate that when the proof is there, nobody will give a shit. And that's literally what's happening. I mean, in 2017, they're like, hey, here's some videos of UFOs, and they're real videos from real naval ships, and they're pretty hard to deny. And it's 6 years later, and there's a UFO hearing, and there's people talking about recovering crafts and reverse engineering them in a completely serious, like nobody's calling David Grush a liar in Congress, right? Like they're all just like, yep, this is a thing. Let's talk about it. And nobody cares. So I think I was kind of right on that. I think it's just that they release these things. So it's just like with, how your phone listens to everything you say. They did that one for 30 years. They conditioned people to get used to being spied on. Now everybody's just like, yeah, everything in my house listens to everything I say. And the government has everything. There was a story this week of a woman who got arrested because she worked for the NSA and she saved every single dick pic on her phone. Like everyone, and nobody's going, what? They have all of our dick pics? They're just like, no, this is like a thing. And good thing this woman got arrested for having 20, I think it was like 20,000 pictures. So, but like the first part of it's the part everybody should be freaked out about. Like, oh, they have everything we have on our phones, but nobody cares about that anymore.
I think it's become common for people, again, to make the joke that they're listening, because how many times have someone had a conversation with someone else and like they get on Facebook and they get like a random sponsored suggested ad of something you were literally just talking about? It happened. The first time I noticed, I think, was in 2016. A guy and I were at work and we were talking about that Danny Trejo Sling TV commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And within like 5 minutes, he screams for me to come into his office, and there's a sponsored ad on his computer from Sling TV. I was like, that's strange. We weren't even like, I wasn't on my phone or anything like that. We were just having a conversation, and then all of a sudden it just pops up. I was like, yeah, I've told everyone they've been listening for a while, but everyone thinks I'm crazy.
When did you start noticing that, Abby? Because I feel like that's just a common thing now. Oh, are you there?
Did you ask me a question?
Oh, I said, when did you start noticing that like your phone listens to everything you say?
Yep. I think it's my internet. The audio is
I
kind
think it is your internet.
going in and out a little.
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit.
I couldn't tell if it was my keystroke was picking up or if it was listening to me, and I haven't. I believe all they did was say it out loud. But for me, anything I say out loud, I'm also typing to people, so it's hard to tell where it's getting the data.
I figured this out in, I think it was 2016 or 2017, because I had my phone in my pocket. I wasn't talking on it. And I was driving in a car that the muffler had fallen off of. So, like, I don't know how my phone could have heard me. But
Yeah.
I told a friend of this idea of an invention that I had, I didn't think anybody else had thought of before. And while I was driving in the car, and then literally the next day, I'm getting ads for this thing I didn't know existed on my phone from a conversation I had with my phone in my pocket in a loud car. So, like, I think it's worse than most people realize. I think it's like they can really hear pretty much everything.
So
Wow.
the weirdest thing that I had happen, and I never looked into it, I never spoke to it with anyone. I literally just thought of something. I was on my way home from work, and I don't know why I had this random thought, but I was like, I wonder what it takes to become like a notary public, like how someone gets to like go
Yeah.
somewhere and stamp it. So I get on Google, which shouldn't be Googling while I'm driving, but I was. And I was like, how to, and the first thing that pops up after how to was become a notary. Like, of all the things to come up after how to, why is that the first thing that popped up on Google? It's like, I literally just closed my phone and I just tossed it to the seat next to me and I just kept driving. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
Wow.
I've had that happen to me before and it freaked me out. I know some of the times it happened, I was thinking about something because I saw it in a store. And then I listened to this guy from Instagram talk about how your phone tracks your data even when you don't have your data or your location, even when you don't have it on. And these stores all have these computer systems that say where everything is located. So if you stop in front of a rack for too long, your phone will know that you were standing and looking at this one item, and it'll advertise that item to you. So like that one's weird, but it's kind of confirmed. But I swear I've had the same thing where it's like, I was thinking about something. Why am I seeing this? Like, why am I seeing ads for it? Because I never talked about this thing ever.
My other podcast, my co-host and I, we kind of joke around or whatever because his name's Ed, and we keep getting advertisements to fight erectile dysfunction. And
Amazing.
so we've got the running gag on every episode that we're trying to get that blue pill sponsor because help combat Ed, because all we ever talk about, if someone says his name or we mention his name, like we keep getting all these Facebook sponsored ads for Hims or all these other things. I was like, literally just because of your name, they think we're talking about erectile dysfunction.
That's amazing.
I get a lot of ads for things that my boss would be interested in the context of our work. And I'm like, I'm not going to buy that ever. That's not a product, you know?
Yeah, I see stuff that lately I've been noticing they're suggested ads for sports teams that I'm not even like, I enjoy like my local sports or stuff like that, but like I see stuff for like the Houston Texans or the Denver Broncos football. I was like, I'm from Indiana. I don't really give two craps about these.
Do you use a VPN? Is that like, because I've noticed that if I use a VPN, I'll get ads for like wherever my VPN is saying it's out of.
I've thought about it, but I haven't been because at this point I figured they already know who I am. Speaking of which I mentioned earlier, anyone out there listening, I'm glad you guys are, but if you need to reach out to me, please do not contact my wife trying to reach me, because all that does is create her to have anxiety that random people are trying to contact her to contact me. Yeah, that just happened a little bit ago, and I got a screenshot and some confusion as to why random people are messaging her trying to contact me.
So in other words, you're sleeping on the couch tonight. Is that what
No. I might just have to make up a different Facebook account to link to my Tinfoil Tales page. That way, if people want to reach out to me, they don't really have all my personal information, I guess, linked to it.
That's fair.
I'm not a big time podcast or anything like that. I'm still small potatoes here, but in the last month or two, it's like tripled in size, which I don't know why, but I'm happy it has. But it's just random stuff. But a lot of topics that I've been getting questions about, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, it's called the red grid mark phenomena.
Are you familiar with that, Abby? I don't know if I am.
sometimes I don't know something by name, so let me just Google it.
Yeah,
real
that's what I was thinking too. Because sometimes I'll know something, but I didn't know the. Well,
Apparently,
why don't you explain it really quick? Because I'm curious.
apparently these people wake up and they have these random red blotch marks on their body. It could be on their back, their
Oh.
neck, their legs, arm, and they're sometimes in like actual patterns to where it looks like it's been placed there by something. And it almost looks like, well, I've described them as like a hickey, like someone, obviously you suck on their arm or whatever, you're going to get a hickey, but these are like intricate patterns and no one knows where they're coming from. And they went to doctors and they can't explain it. And I've actually interviewed the guy that made up the red grid bark phenomenon, like Facebook group.
Hmm.
And he says they must, like, they just appear, they're there for a few days, they go away, and then they always come back in like the summer on him. But I don't think he had one this year. But
It looks like somebody stepped on these people with cleats. I'm looking at pictures of it right now
Yeah.
because it's like it's a perfect grid.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they
The
can't
other-
explain. Like the guy just sent me photos today, and he'd said he had just gotten home from a trip, and his wife was home, I guess, with their daughter, and that's why he was freaking out because she has these on her side, and he has no idea what it was. So he Googled it, and it come up to my interview with Justin, who made that group, who was one of the first people that I can think of that kind of started looking into it. And I was like, I'm no expert, man. I can send you to the group where people have been sharing their photos and everything. I was like, but I have no explanations to it other than what I've seen on that group. People wake up and have these marks on them and they're there for a few days and they go away. They don't really get an illness or anything like that. But Justin, he said that when he had his, I'm pretty sure, like he said, he never felt ill, like he didn't get sick or anything like that. Like he felt something, but he believes that they're somehow placed on them. I'm not going to go out on the limb of saying aliens or anything like that, but it's not, there's really no explanation, I guess, earthly explanations, we'll say, to explain how these things come about.
It does sound like kind of that mysterious wounds that you see in UFO kidnap stories, abduction stories.
Mm-hmm.
I also, you said they kind of look like a hickey, and I am like, that theory that octopuses are aliens.
The
So they
suction
just have
cups.
like
no-
Cthulhu type stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. 'Cause they have like no DNA similarity to anything else on Earth, and they have uh eight legs, which is just not a common thing, and their blood's blue and all that. But I just wondered what does an octopus suction cup pattern look like
I
on
should look
somebody?
that up. But yeah,
Yeah.
that would be an interest. It's Cthulhu visiting you. And when you first brought it up, I was thinking I was going to see him in the patterns of like hands and things like that, and it would link back to some like demon encounter stuff. But this is just like square grids. It's very
Yeah.
weird.
Some people have got like these intricate, it almost reminds me of like crop circles. Like some of the designs they have on themselves look like a crop circle type pattern.
Mm.
And the ones that get me the most, they're on little kids. I've got little kids, but someone's kid had it right on their cheek, on their forehead. I was like, if a parent's pressing something against their kid's head just to take a photo, it looks like they burnt something on. I was like, parents are fucked up.
Yeah, it's
But-
really creepy.
But that's not the case. Like these people are on these groups looking for answers because they don't know what this is on the kid's face. They took the kid to the doctor and they don't have any explanation of what it is. And they claim it's not like a bacterial or viral or something like that. They don't.
Yeah, it's not eczema or anything.
They don't have any idea of what could be causing it, and then it just goes away, and then it might come back a couple months later, or it might never come back, or it might come back in a few weeks. Like there's no rhyme or reason to how it comes back, and it's not always in the same spot, but sometimes it does come back in the same spot, but it's a different pattern.
Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with tryptophobia?
I know the term, but I don't know what it means. I've heard of it.
It's the fear of small holes, but
Okay, yeah.
it's generally, people who are tryptophobic would probably have the same reaction to these grid patterns because it's patterns of holes like honeycomb or just kind of this visceral reaction to that kind of pattern, and the existence of a fear like that implies genetic memory of some awful thing. Like there's nothing scary about that unless there is, and we have an instinct that that's something that's bad, so it makes you wonder.
Yeah, I don't, for some reason, like I said, this topic has been one that I've come across about a year ago, and I don't really see a whole lot of people talking about it on any of their podcasts or anything like that.
Yeah, that's interesting that so many people are asking you about it, because we get a lot of requests, and I don't think I've heard about the red grid mark phenomenon. We get a lot of stuff for like Nephilim clowns and
Yeah.
Clintons and stuff like that. But yeah.
No one really sends me requests to do things. This one I just kind of stumbled across because I was in an alien abduction group and someone had posted up those marks on a Facebook group, and someone said, looks like red grid mark phenomena. So I tried to figure out what that was, and I ended up coming across the group, and I ended up finding the creator of the group, and that's how I interviewed him. But there are a lot of people on that group. This is not, for being as active as it is with people, different people having these experiences, it's strange to me that it's still kind of not necessarily like mainstream, but more talked about, I guess. It's one of those things that's still like under the rug.
Yeah, I just got on Mayo Clinic, and Mayo Clinic has no answer to like 30 people asking this question.
Wow.
And it was asked 3 years ago. It was the first posted in September 19th, 2020 on Mayo Clinic's website. And Mayo Clinic has zero answers for this after 3 years. That is odd. That's really weird.
Not even a bullshit answer.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Not even a bullshit like, oh, it's just a rare type of eczema, or you slept on a thing. There's no explanation at all. Actually, there's way more than 30. There's 7 pages.
Whoa.
Of people asking and sharing pictures, and there's I don't know how many responses on a page, 20. So hundreds of people. Oh wait, there's more than that. There's a ton of this online. There's 8 pages.
Wow.
So yeah, on the most well-known hospital in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder if it's tied in. I'd like to see a cross section or a analysis of how many of these people are also experiencing sleep paralysis.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting crossover.
They're waking up with it, right?
Yeah.
It's always showing itself in the morning.
He has a survey. I'd have to find it, but he has a survey somewhere that when people join the group, he asks them questions, and he's got like compiled figures and stuff of how, because I was like, what type of blood is it? Has someone got a specific type of blood pattern that they're looking for? Is it something like that? He said, no, everyone's just random. And like, because that was my first thought, was like, maybe it's a specific blood type of people that this is happening to, but it's really all just random. There's no rhyme or reason. The experiences are different. Some people they just wake up normally, and some people, they notice that they're at work. Some people have had it on their wrist. A lot of it's on the wrist, it seems like. And I've asked if maybe it's because they have like a watch or some kind of like an Apple Watch or something like that. It's the electronics, the signals or whatever are sending like some sort of burn to their skin. But he said he's looked into that too, and it's not common.
Huh. Yeah, that's super strange, dude.
Wow.
But it's just one of those weird things that I stumbled across, and we did that interview and made a video, and for whatever reason people have been seeking me out. I was like, I don't know anything about this. I've never experienced it. I just interviewed someone because I thought more people should know about it, because from all the things I was looking at, there was nothing out there about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I know you guys had an interview recently because you talked about having issues with electronic equipment and stuff when you talk about a certain cryptid.
Yeah.
I've having the same issue recently. Like, I'd heard your guys' episode, and I never had like connection issues or anything like that. But then a few days later, there was that lady that we're discussing psychokinesis, and she was talking about how the government was doing certain type of experiments on people in the 60s for like that type of thing. And I'd mentioned, I didn't even say the letters, but I said there's a 3-letter alphabet agency that I know we're doing all sorts of experiments and stuff. And as soon as I'd mentioned that, there was like I ended up editing out, but there's like 5 minutes of silence because she completely just like left the group chat. Like, it wasn't in there anymore. Like, our Zoom meeting, she was gone. I was like,
wow,
did I offend her or something? And she ended up getting back on. She said she had to get in a vehicle and drive down the road because all of the internet in her house just quit working. There was no signal, nothing. So she had to get in a car and she had to go further down the road just to get signal.
Wow.
And then while we were still talking, she'd mentioned that right before our interview, she was actually on the DoD website looking up information about psychokinesis and stuff that she was researching. I was like, well, maybe because you were looking into that, that kind of made them start wondering why you're on their website. And
Yeah.
Dennis wanted to talk about these topics. But even while she was talking to me, she said the screen on her vehicle, it like flipped sideways or whatever, like on the actual dash and stuff. Like she said, this has never happened before. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I can't see what's going on, but it is odd to me that mention a certain thing and all of a sudden these internet connections are happening and your electronics are screwing up. And then like 2 days later, I'd interviewed someone about his dogman encounter. And as soon as he started talking about that, there was weird noises and like he just completely like cut out here and like his internet connection was going bad. And then a couple days later, I interviewed someone else and they're talking about Skinwalker and it was taboo to talk about them. And same thing, he'd start having internet connection issues. I was like, maybe it's my internet. Like maybe my internet's bad, but I have fiber optic internet and I keep checking it. And when everyone else is having internet connections, I was like, nope, mine's still going strong. So I don't know. I never noticed it before until after your guys' episode came out. And
we've gotten a lot of response from that episode specifically about that thing, and just other podcasters that pretty much every podcaster I've talked to has had a weird in the conspiracy space has had a weird thing that they can't seem to talk about without something going on. I know we talked earlier about how, you know, the government kind of listens to everything we say and NSA has all of our photos and stuff, but I'm not convinced that it's some FBI agent sitting out in the van like waiting to push a button. I think it's more spiritual. I think that's why it happens around specifically the Skinwalker and Dogman stuff seems to be more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, when we talk about Nephilim, sometimes it really happens a lot. So, what was our most recent one? Oh, it was QAnon. We had a lot of problems with that, but
yeah, we had some issues with QAnon, and then we had to completely not record the episode we were going to do about the Maui situation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because and put it off because of internet issues. So
I was actually going to touch on that, but I've already gotten a warning from YouTube about a bit. I've already been banned once. So
that's why we do everything on Rumble, dude.
Yeah.
So I don't want my YouTube channel completely banned, but there is a video, I forget what episode it is, but they won't air it at all because the guy, he takes photos and he sees the aliens in the skies and the UFOs and stuff by using, like if you have an Apple phone, the image that still moves a little bit, I forget what it's called. Like,
yeah, I know what you're talking about though.
Basically, he can see that, and he changes the colors by editing the hue and everything to it, and he sees these things. I first thought it sounded more like, you know, how people see faces in clouds. Like if you're, I don't know what the term is, but like you see faces and recognize certain things. I thought that's what it was. But some of the stuff that he has taken photos of, it is interesting. Like I'll say that, like, do I think there's a planet circulating the star up there, the sun? Like, I don't know anything about that. But that was what the topic was about. And the video got banned because, and I won't say the word, there's a specific word on YouTube that if you mention, they really start hounding you. So on my other podcast, we always ask everyone what they did during the Beast era, which was the era that everything was kind of closed down.
Mm-hmm.
So we refer to that terrible thing as the Beast. And
that's fair.
So the guy was talking about his mother had gotten sick and she had her jabs, this and that, and still passed away. And I got flagged because it was spreading false information about the jabby jabs. I was like, that wasn't even what the topic was even about. That was like a 2-second thing, and they banned it because of that. But I was like, of all the other stories that I put out there and all the other things that get told to me, I was like, they're mad about that being misinformation when it wasn't even literally talked about.
Yeah, I've had 2-hour-long videos taken down because of a single sentence on the jab subject and things that rhyme with election interference.
Mm-hmm.
That you just can't say anything at all on certain subjects. But I don't know. I mean, that's like for us, like that's why we've been pushing our Rumble so hard. That's why I like the podcasting space. Like outside of Spotify doing stuff to Joe Rogan, I feel like it's kind of the most free space on the internet is just all the podcast catchers because there's so many of them. I don't know. I've never ran into that where like an episode's been taken down or anything.
Yeah,
I hear you.
It's out on Spotify. It's out on all the other streaming things, but for whatever reason, old YouTube won't allow that video to be up there. It says it violated the terms and conditions of the agreements, and I got a warning against me. And if I get one more warning, the channel's going to be shut down. So I'm just waiting at this point.
We honestly we demonetized ourselves on YouTube, and ever since it was so freeing. Like you don't even realize how much you're self-censoring until you just decide that it's not gonna be over your head anymore.
I'm not even monetized on anything because I'm not big enough, I guess. I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't know how anyone gets monetized in the podcast scheme of things. So I don't know. I've tried to figure it out. Like I have a hosting service and it always has dynamic ads. It says coming soon. It's been coming soon for over a year now.
Oh,
So I don't know when that's coming soon. But I'm also the type of person to where I'm not here to try and make money. That's not the point of this podcast. It's like literally, I think there's information out there and there's stories that people need to hear. And just from being a person that's had some weird experiences myself and not being able to talk about it, that was my original goal, was to try and make a platform for others to come on here and share their experiences, because you can't really do that in a normal functioning society. But a podcast, I can keep it all anonymous. They don't have to reveal anything or anything like that. It's all just audio. So I have the capabilities, if they don't want me to use a real voice, I can alter their voice if I really need to. I don't like doing that. So anyone listening, if you would prefer me to do that, I can, but I don't prefer to do that. It takes a while, but it is an option.
Something like this.
Yeah.
Okay. I got all these like in my board.
Yeah, he's got all these.
So I can do that just to make the podcast fun. Just try some different voices.
But no, I've went down some rabbit holes, and again, my first thought process was my buddy and I were just we're shooting the shit, talking about conspiracy stuff, because we've always dove down into like the conspiracy realm. And our first episode was about weather control, which neither one of us know what the hell we're talking about. So it's just more or less two guys BSing around with each other more than anything. And then I started interviewing other people as far as like their encounters, and it kind of just went off in that tangent. So we don't really dive into too many conspiracy things anymore, besides obviously these weird experiences that people are having, or the secret programs that certain groups do that get me shut down. I don't know.
yeah.
Have you guys had any issues far as some of the things that you've talked about? Have you noticed anyone or anything being strange about afterwards? Like after you release an episode, have you had any weird issues afterwards?
Weird issues afterwards. We had a lot of trouble just getting some episodes to work just because of internet issues. I have two forms of internet at my house just to keep up with issues, and sometimes they'll both crash at the same time. I don't know. I mean, some people don't want to talk to you anymore after you do a conspiracy podcast for a while. But I don't know if we've had anything like super strange. There was one day, I'll tell you this. There was one day I was convinced for an hour that someone was tampering with my brakes, and it really freaked me out. I didn't tell Abby about this at the time because I was really freaked out. And then it turned out it wasn't. But the reason I thought they were tampering with my brakes is something kept happening. And my dad and my grandpa are mechanics. Something kept happening to my brakes that I've never in my entire life working on cars, and my dad never heard of ever happening. And it happened to me 2 or 3 times in a row. And I was pretty freaked out about it the third time it happened. And went to a auto parts store to get some parts, and the guy basically told me, he's like, yeah, you won't hear much about this, but like that particular year of that particular car has that issue, and it's something that no other car has, and it's super weird, and you need to buy this part so it doesn't happen again. It hasn't happened since, but like at the time I was a little freaked out thinking,
Makes you
like,
start thinking.
somebody, yeah, and I don't remember what like we had just talked about, but I was just like, my gosh, did somebody, like, I don't think it was, yeah, I don't know. Your brain goes places when your brakes get messed with more than once.
No.
Yeah, most of the weird stuff happens like in the process of trying to get something out, and
Yeah.
then once it's out, it's like whatever.
No. I've never really had anything strange that I can relate back to doing this other than my own parental paranoia, I guess.
Sure.
Someone has, and this has happened to me several times already, and I've mentioned this before. Someone originally had sent a comment when I was looking for guests. I basically go through Facebook groups, and not to spam, but I don't even like promote the name of my podcast or anything like that. I just asked if anyone has any experiences they'd be willing to share, like either like alien abduction stuff or paranormal stuff, cryptids, whatever. And I post in these groups, and about 99% of these groups kick me out of the group after I post something. They delete my post and don't want me posting in there for whatever reason. But the ones that do make it, someone commented on there, and I don't even remember what group this was in, but they said, I feel for you and your family. I said, okay, that kind of piqued my interest. So I commented back. I was like, what is that supposed to mean? They said, I fear for you guys because when you start looking into things, things start looking back. And I just wrote it off as some wacko on the internet just saying shit. Well,
quoting Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just 3 days ago, someone commented the same thing. When you stare into the abyss stares back. I thought it was funny because they misspelled abyss. But but they I've heard this like multiple times. And right after they said that, I just kind of wrote it off and didn't think much about it. Well, my daughter started having trouble sleeping, and so did my youngest son afterwards. It's like they're having like nightmares and stuff. And I was like, man, in the back of my mind is like, is this because of what I've been doing? Like, have I opened up some sort of negative energy to access through here to mess with my children? And then for a while, I actually did take a break. I started doing the other podcast with my friend Ed. And from the end of March up until June, so about a 2-month break, I wasn't doing anything related with this podcast. And they didn't seem to have any sleep issues. But now that I started doing this again, guess what happened? They're having sleeping issues again.
Interesting.
Yeah, I believe it. I think Abby touched on this earlier. About, what did you say towards the beginning of this podcast about spiritual warfare or something like that? I thought you said something, but yeah, we've talked to a lot of people who, when they get into this stuff, I feel like, or no, you said it's not just the rise of people being interested in conspiracy stuff.
Oh, yes.
It's the rise in the interest in witchcraft. It's the rise in the interest of all kinds of occult practices and weird things and crystals and new age and whatever, Anunnaki worship. I mean, the list is really, 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 really long. And for us, I've noticed the same things. Like if we are really looking into something, we'll get certain spiritual attacks. It's just what they are. Whether it's, maybe something it's financial, maybe it's something with, bad luck is maybe people want to call it. But for me, I know that this is something my wife is very, very sensitive to. She's dealt with sleep paralysis her whole life. And certain things are just, it is true. Like the idea that they look back at you, I think. And she'll know before I tell her if there's like some kind of spiritual attack coming. Like she just knows it and she just prays about it a lot. So I'm grateful for her, but I feel like that's kind of the thing that we're, I think, uniquely called to talk about in this space. Is I think a lot of people are interested in it for all the wrong reasons. I think that they look at like the Anunnaki stuff, for example, and they think this is a cool thing. Maybe I should do, like, I hear this all the time. Like maybe I should do DMT and speak with these things and reach into the Akashic records. And it's all this demonic forbidden knowledge stuff And I think it's kind of a weird line to straddle where it's like people are going to look into this stuff. People are interested in this stuff. This stuff is real.
Right.
And I think that's why we want to talk about it. But I always want to caution people, like, this is not a joke. I think that's why where we come at it from is like people think it's a joke. I've had friends who thought it was a joke to play with Ouija boards until they literally, it's a true story, tried to burn it, didn't burn, threw it into a cornfield. It was on their porch the next day. Like crazy stuff happening that people just stumble into. So yeah, I don't go into any of this stuff lightly. I know it's probably not a popular opinion on all this stuff, but it's just the reality of it from everything I've experienced and seen and talked to people. So yeah, I think this stuff is not for the faint of heart. I'll put it that way, and I don't think it's for the faint of spirit and faith either.
So I've always remained skeptical to a lot of things, but anymore since I've been doing this and talking with other people. Obviously, I had my own weird encounter years ago.
Mhm.
It opens you up to accepting, obviously, it's not all black and white. A lot of the things that we think is reality isn't always reality. And when it comes to paranormal, these shadow men, these cryptids, this and that, I've got my own sort of harebrained idea that maybe they'd mention things are interdimensional, like paranormal side or whatever. I've always wondered if maybe what we're seeing, as far as like spirits or ghosts, or it's something from a different, I don't want to say a parallel universe, but something that's kind of like not supposed to be in ours, but it blends into ours here and there. Like it's almost like they bleed into us. Which I also have another theory that maybe we're all just a simulation, and that's another out there theory, but I don't
That's
know.
getting more and more popular too, the simulation theory.
I think I'm going to have an episode coming up soon, more or less dedicated to that. So that'll be something I touch base on later. I've got my own harebrained things, and I think a lot of people don't want to admit that we're all just NPC characters and no one wants to.
Some people I think are NPCs. I think the simulation thing is interesting because I think it's touching on a foundation of truth, that there's something stranger about the world around us, and that it's not everything we see with our physical eyes is exactly the way that we think it is. I think there's something much deeper. You call it interdimensional. I think of it as spiritual realm. But I think that the problem that I have with the whole simulation theory is it seems like everybody does this throughout history, where it's like, this is the level of technology that we have now, and this is my understanding of things now, and I'm going to make it fit. So like, I feel like it's touching on a foundation of truth, but looking at it as a kind of a computer video game thing, I don't think is right. And I feel like it's weird to me because I feel like I've seen people use it as a replacement for God. And then it just comes back to like, well, no, there is a God. He's just some nerdy computer gamer, like his mom's basement, like coding some like EverQuest knockoff or something like that, which is a weird version of God in my opinion.
The core of it I like is this belief that there's a more real world that we can't see, that we're the less real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the things that we have a hard time acknowledging as real are actually more real than we are. And this is why I think that Bigfoot is always blurry, and you can never get good photos of these things. It's because they're not in the same reality or on the same level of reality as us.
There's this thing that goes back through, UFO, Bigfoot, every type of encounter you can think of. And it's been really done well in certain fictionalized books, probably better than most people talk about it, which I think sometimes fiction writers really hit on truths that are hard to explain any other way. That some people can see things, and other people who don't want to see won't see.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like this happens a lot. I've met people where we experience the same thing, literally in the same room, same time. And we talked about it afterwards. And then it was like, it was just dumped out of their memory, and they just literally have no memory of this thing. It's almost gaslighting. And I don't think they were trying to gaslight me. I just think they couldn't remember it. Like they literally physically couldn't hold on to this memory, this thought, or this idea, because they saw something from beyond this world. where was I going with this? I had a point. I did.
There are people who don't see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and then you brought up this idea because Project Bluebeam gets talked about a lot over the last year, and I was like, I listened to Werner von Braun's idea and Ronald Reagan's idea, and I've seen the technology. It all lines up that like there is going to be some type of fake alien invasion or whatever. And I was talking about this with Abby because I'm like, well, I don't believe that UFOs are fake. I don't think that aliens aren't real either. I'm like, so I'm trying to understand, is it just to like scare people to get them to do what you want? I think that's part of it. But Abby had this theory that basically if you force people to understand that it's real, they'll start seeing it.
Yeah. You give them a framework. So show them a hologram of it and they're like, oh shoot, I can see it. And then when they see the real thing, they can actually accept it and keep it.
They actually can see it. Yeah. It's like you force them to accept this is part of their reality now, and then their brain can handle seeing it or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're prepping everyone for further acceptance of whatever it is they want to reveal in the years away.
Yeah.
I don't see them coming out and be like, yep, here's your reptilian overlords anytime soon. But
but they have to get you to accept the reptilian overlords a little bit just to get you to ultimately worship them, which I think the goal, it's like let me put it this way. I don't think the government has a hearing about UFOs without an agenda. I don't think they're just like, yeah, you know what? A couple of us are interested and this guy was a whistleblower. Let's just have this because we really want the public to know. I mean, the one thing that was super clear about the UFO hearing is they didn't want the public to know anything other than what they wanted them to know, other than their already like controlled narrative around this thing. Because 90% of it, it was super scripted. And 90% of it was, I'll tell you guys in a skiff. I'll tell you in a skiff. We'll talk afterwards. So Congress, you get to know, but the American people, this is what I want you to know and take away. And it seemed like they prepped the headlines even for the next day with the whole human biologic or non-human biologics line, which wasn't even the most crazy thing said in the hearing.
They didn't even really reveal anything that wasn't already kind of out there in the first place. Like,
no, not to people who pay attention, but they did to the general public. And I think that's the point of it, right? Is like people like us are going to be, if looked into this stuff, are willing to accept that it's a reality. There's too many credible people who have talked about UFOs and alien encounters for too many years for them not to be true. Like on aggregate, it's true, right? You can discredit a person. You can discredit a couple people. You can't discredit, hundreds or thousands of years and pictures and videos and testimonies. So people who look into it know it's real. But I think the general public need them to know it's real for a reason. That's kind of my theory on it. Is like it's not goodwill on behalf of our Congress. It's an agenda of some type.
I love how the media ran with the non-human biologics thing, like, oh, they found alien remains, but they didn't talk about the reverse engineering the craft thing. Like, we are actively reverse engineering these things, and we have been for some time. That's the part. Well, I mean, it's not that the alien body thing isn't interesting,
but he didn't say they found alien bodies. He said we found non-human biologics. It could mean hair, it could mean fingerprints, could mean literally anything. And that was interesting. I'm not saying it's not, but the reverse engineering shit, how did that go under the radar? It almost felt like that part wasn't supposed to be said, maybe. Well, there's two. Maybe that was, but there was one part that definitely wasn't supposed to be said, and it never made the headlines. And that was when everybody in that room admitted that someone outside of the government controls the government.
Yeah.
That was weird. Did you watch the whole UFO hearings?
I watched briefly. I've actually been listening to your guys' breakdown episode of it.
Oh, okay.
I haven't finished it all. I think isn't it like over 3 hours your episode?
It was really long.
I'm in like hour 2, like the second hour. But I don't get a whole lot of free time to listen to things. Like I listen when I'm driving around for work, but other than that, I've got kids at home and a whole bunch of other stuff, so I barely have any time to do things. That's why I try and do most of my stuff at nighttime because everyone's asleep, so I have some free time.
Yeah.
But I was listening to things and I watched like the breakdown the next day from mainstream news. I was like, well, they're going to butcher it anyways,
right.
But we'll see what it says. And I was listening to it. I was like, Okay, well, didn't they say the same shit last year when they had like their one hearing beforehand? So I remember they had like
Yeah.
something. So I don't think anything new ever came about. I do try and listen to it's George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell's podcast called
Yeah.
Weaponized.
Mhm.
Yep.
They're heavily involved with these guys, and I don't know. I don't really have a personal stance one way or the other if I think these guys are. I think the one guy, the pilot, I think he's being honest, but some of these other people, I don't necessarily have a whole like Grush or whatever.
The two guys on the left and right of Grush,
Yeah.
Fravor, I think Captain Fravor,
Fravor.
and David Graves, or I think those are their names.
Mm-hmm.
I 100% believe both these guys.
Yeah.
Like they've been talking about it for a long time. They're impeachable, completely credible people, and in both cases they have evidence to back up everything they're saying. Whereas Grush, he was fed this information, and I don't think he realizes that he might have been fed this information for a purpose.
He's the spokesperson for this. He's the face for it, and it's
Yeah.
basically he's going to be the one getting the slack for it.
And-
But he's relaying information that was given to him, nothing that has himself.
And he has the personality, and I listen to experts break down his body language. He has the personality of someone who wants a pat on the back. So he wants his colleagues are like, hey, you got to say this thing, go say the thing. And on the other hand, he's like, but I want my government to be proud of me. I'm being a patriot. I'm doing this for the right reasons, and I'm not going to say anything the government doesn't want me to say, but I'm a whistleblower. And it just if I was going to pick someone that I could feed information to, that I wanted the public to accept as real, that would be the guy. Like he is the poster child for this is the guy I'm going to feed the narrative to, and he will spread the narrative, and he'll be believable because he believes what I'm telling him. I don't know. That's my thought on it. I don't trust David Grush super much after that hearing.
No, it's like I think what he's talking about is real.
Yes.
But I don't think he is honest, or the way that he's presenting the information is honest.
If
Or
he
if
is
he's
a
honest, it's because he was
whistleblower,
told what to say.
Yeah.
if he's a whistleblower, then why isn't he blowing the whistle? Basically, everything that they've asked him, he won't say.
Exactly.
Well, that's we talk about this on that breakdown. When Trump had a phone call with Ukraine, the whistleblower got protection like the next day.
Yeah.
And this guy has been out there for 2 months, supposedly trying to get this whistleblower thing. The Congress calls a hearing, and they don't think, hey, maybe we should like use the channels available to us to get this damn whistleblower coverage for this guy so he can say anything at all. So the whole thing was stupid to even have the hearing when you got a guy there that's not allowed to say anything, and 99% of his answers were, I'll tell you in a skiff. What does that mean? Like who? And then the other answer was, we tried to get a skiff and they wouldn't let us have a skiff. And the Gang of Eight's supposed to know.
Who's they? You're the government.
Exactly. That was the crazy part. He said it straight up one time, and everybody in the room agreed. He's like, yeah, these non-governmental agencies that are above the CIA's like top secret clearance, like non-government. Okay. People not in our government are telling the government how to run the show. Got it.
It reminds me of the Smoking Man and his whatever he was from the X-Files. Like they're above all of the agencies.
Yeah.
I thought he was. Again, I'm not going to say the guy's not real, but he doesn't. I feel like he's the plant. He's there to be like, here's the information that I have. Do I think he believes it? Probably. But I feel like he's also pushing the information that they want out, because if he had information that they did not want out, that guy would have never made it out there to talk. Whistleblower protection.
They never would have gave him a hearing.
Yeah.
There would have been no whistleblower protection because he would have killed himself twice by shooting himself in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
He would have hung himself from a tree and then shot himself with a shotgun that was 20 feet away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He would have been Clinton.
Yeah, super Clinton.
But basically, with that, I just kind of rolled my eyes because there's so much going on right now, and this will probably go the route where I get canceled for this. But where I live, aren't you? You guys are from Michigan area, right?
I am.
PJ
Abby's from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay. about a month ago. Do you remember? Was it really, really smoky, foggy looking up
We
there?
talked about this on our show a little bit. Yeah, it was very smoky. I'm not I don't know where you're going with this, but I'm not convinced it was smoke is my theory on it. But anyway, yeah, it was super smoky here.
We were talking about this on my other podcast, and again, that is music band related. It's not conspiracy at all.
Mhm.
And we were talking about how why are the trees burning? And my co-host was like, what type of trees smell like burnt plastic?
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
I was like, plastic ones, fake ones.
Fake trees.
I'll
Fake
tell you
trees.
this, man. The same. It's been the Canadian wildfire has been going on for a while, and I drive a truck, so I drive all over the state, and I drive over Ohio and Indiana, and for well over a month, maybe 2 months, the wildfires were burning, and I was talking to guys that were driving up into the UP and driving over in the Thumb, which is over by Canada, and they're like, "Yeah, it's kind of smoky over there," and then I never saw it myself. And then all of a sudden in mid Michigan and Western Michigan, as far as you can get from the Canadian border, it's so bad they're canceling sporting events. They're canceling it wasn't school, it's summer. People were staying home from work, like they were canceling all kinds of events. There was warnings going out. My phone got a warning saying the air is super not breathable. Don't go outside. Right. The same day, the wildfire's been going for a while. The day that all this happens, that my son's last baseball game was canceled, that I'm working outside in this shit and breathing in this plastic smelling wood smoke. I read an article that says Biden just approved them to test out Bill Gates' plan of putting chemicals in the air to block the sunlight. And I'm looking at this going like,
Wait a
it's
second.
approved. And they're saying, well, we're not doing it yet, but it is. We could if we wanted to.
Sure, you're
I'm
not.
like, you
Sure
are
you're not.
doing it. You're doing it in Michigan, I think. If you look at the maps, the freaking wildfire smoke is worse in Ohio and Indiana and Wisconsin and I think Missouri than it was anywhere in Canada that week.
Yeah. We had so much dense, quote unquote, smoke.
Yeah.
That it looked like a typical foggy day. Like if the kids were in school, they'd be having a 2-hour delay because of how much smoke was out there. But it smelled like manufactured burning of trash, like plastic burning. It didn't smell like
right
a forest fire to me, which again, I've never been in a forest fire. I don't really know what it smells like, but I don't think it smells like burnt trash or plastic.
My wife grew up in California, and she was even like, I mean, I lived there my whole life. We've had wildfires. I lived in Washington. We had tons of fires. And I've never experienced anything like what it was here. It was not. I've been near wildfires a lot. I've never smelt something like that or seen it quite the way it was. It was very odd.
We had interviewed when this was going on. The lady was from Canada. I think she was from Toronto area or somewhere up in that area. And we asked her about it, and she did not want to talk about the fires because she did not want to cause issues with the release of the episode because there's certain things that you don't talk about. I was like, you're from Canada. We're just glad to have you on here because we thought you're under fire from all the things we keep seeing and all the smoke we're seeing. Like we thought the whole country was burning the way they make it sound.
Yeah, they did make it sound like that. I don't know how bad it is there. I'm sure it is. I'm just not convinced that what we're seeing here is the same thing.
It is actually kind of crazy how different the coverage is of these wildfires as Australia. Because Australia, they were like, it's burning and it's awful. And these, and just really stressing how awful it was for the Australians.
Yeah.
And these fires, it's like, yeah, New York is covered in smoke and this sucks.
There's a lot of people that don't even believe Australia is even real.
I've been there. I covered that once. We've got a longtime listener of our show and other podcasts I've done who's from Australia. And I like to make that joke to him all the time and be like, you're not even real, dude. Australia doesn't exist.
We've mentioned that we've had someone else, a couple of musicians from Australia that have been on our other podcast. And I've mentioned before, I was like, they're not even real. We're interviewing AI, making everyone think that the Australia actually exists, but it doesn't. It's not even out there. But
it is funny that people actually believe that one. It spawned out of Flat Earth trying to explain one of the things that don't make sense about Flat Earth, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't remember the whole story. It was like, this thing makes Flat Earth not make sense. Therefore, Australia doesn't exist. It's a farm in Arizona. or something like that. The time difference is real. I'll tell you that much.
I think it's an easy one to like accept because it's Australia's just doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Like it's so disconnected from everything else.
It really is.
I think it's a lot bigger than what everyone realizes.
Oh, yeah,
Australia
for sure.
is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how, because you only really hear about Sydney or Melbourne or whatever, like the coastal areas. You don't
Because
hear about
there's nothing in the middle of the country. It's just this vast wilderness and desert.
That's where I'm always like, well, if there was some weird cryptids going on, I'm sure they're out in the outbacks of Australia because no one's out there.
Sure. For sure.
Oh,
Dinosaurs.
No, they
They're probably
actually
roaming around out there.
I think there is supposed to be dinosaurs roaming. That's one of the things that people have seen are like these upright lizards walking in the outback.
There have been some really credible people saying that they've seen dragons in the outback of Australia, and I would believe them because I've been to the Australian outback, and it is so vast it's like incomprehensible, like just how much land is nothing.
Yeah,
in Australia. Yeah,
I just think of Mad Max for some reason.
Yeah.
because that's exactly what it's like. Mad Max was filmed in Australia. It's just the middle, like the sides of America. If you only had like New York and LA, like Australia is America. If you only had New York and LA, that's basically what it is.
Basically, what I was going with originally when I was talking about the smoke is, and this is, like I said, I know this, if it's real, whatever, I'm not questioning. I feel bad for anyone that's died from it or whatever, but I don't understand these fires in Maui that all these people are dying. I was like, I understand you're on an island, but how come you know it's a fire? Like you can get out of there. Why are all these people dying?
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't know where you want to go with the Maui stuff, but well, one, they never gave the emergency broadcast.
Mm-hmm. They never did the alarm.
Yeah, they never did the alarm. They canceled school, but they didn't cancel work. So there was a lot of kids who stayed home and were never alerted that there was a fire. So by the time that the fire hit these houses, I think most of the dead bodies are children, which is extremely tragic. The person in charge of Hawaii, the governor, Josh Green, should be brought up on charges for what he did, 100%. Because he also denied firefighting services and things like that. I mean, the guy's just it feels like it was done on purpose. That's the more I look into it, the more I feel like it is everything the Hawaiian people feared, that they were going to burn down their land and then steal it from them. And that's literally happening. I mean, they put the government of Maui said, we are going to buy this land from you. So don't worry about it, because we're not going to sell it to China. Well, that was what you're worried about. And they're like, we're not worried about China buying it. We're worried about anyone stealing it.
Right? Yeah.
Anybody getting it?
So they're lying. They're saying these two things. Like one side, they're like, hey, we're going to protect you from China buying this up. And it's like, yeah, cool, but you're stealing it from us. So celebrities are stealing it. Their homes just happen to not burn down, any one of them. Eminem, Bill Gates, Will Smith, Oprah Winfrey, Owen Wilson. The list is 20. Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel. None of their houses burnt down. But all of this historic land sites that were protected, that could not be sold or bought by the government or other people, they just happened to burn down. The businesses, a lot of businesses somehow survived, but all the residential burnt down.
It
Trees
seems like
are up next to houses, but yet the boats a quarter mile off the harbor burnt down.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the poorer people are the ones that mysteriously burnt.
Who it was.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was wanting to go with it. Like, I don't know how fires work. I'm not a scientist, but from what I do know is I don't think they pick directions and pick targets of where they're trying to burn. Not necessarily like if a fire starts spreading, it's just going to spread outward, not go in a specific direction and only hit certain things. So to me, it was almost like it was, I don't want to call it a false flag or anything like that, but it almost seems like it was set up to be something like this. Like they're making it, oh, poor Maui. Yes, I feel bad for all the kids and all the people out there, but it's like, I think they've done it themselves. Not Maui, but I think they're doing it for exactly what you said. They want all of that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's 100% true. And it is the people who have historically lived in Maui who want to keep this land the same, that are suffering. I've seen all of the debunker websites say there's no plan to build a smart city in Maui. That's not a thing. They didn't burn it down for that reason. And literally 2 seconds later, you can find it all. You can find smart Jump Smart Maui, and you can find the video on that. You can find the Maui conference that's happening in September. That's literally about how do we deal with change? How do we deal with a city being upgraded to entire electric and AI? It's all there, and it's so crazy because you'll read the debunkers, and then you'll go to the website, and the website will have a little claim at the top. This is not what they told you. Please don't read below.
Yeah.
You read below, and it's everything they told you. I think it's nefarious. And then you get Oprah Winfrey gets to go out there and make a big deal about it and say it's climate change, so that they get to push their favorite narrative that California's climate change and Canada's climate change and Australia's climate change and Maui's climate change, even though they're almost certainly all started on purpose one way or another. It doesn't even have to be direct energy weapons. Just somebody started these fires. I mean, especially if you look at Canada, like 5 fires pop up across the country at the exact same moment. That's not a thing that happens on accident. It's just crazy. It's like they're covering it up, but not even well, because they know the people who are going to buy it are the people who will just read the headlines and just buy anything, and then the people they don't even care anymore. I think they want you to know that they're doing it. Yeah. And that there's nothing you can do about it. This is why, you know how we were talking about Hillary Clinton earlier? They kill people by shooting them in the back of the head twice on purpose. Mm-hmm. They want you to know that they killed this person and they got away with it. Yeah. And that the regular plebeian everyday normies will buy it. They'll buy that Hillary Clinton doesn't kill people. They'll buy that this isn't a thing. Doesn't matter if it's suicide by 2 shots to the back of the head, because the CNN told them. And it serves 2 purposes. See who's completely brainwashed, and then the people who aren't brainwashed, it's a threat. It's saying we can kill you and get away with it.
Yeah. I've always throw this back here from a couple of years ago. It's a running joke, and everyone says it knowing it to be true or whatever, but the whole Epstein didn't kill himself. I was like, literally everyone will make that comment, and it's like, oh, Epstein didn't kill. Well, you're admitting that you know that he was killed off because of what he had known or whatever else, and everyone goes about their business, just like the Hillary thing. They'll make a joke that, oh, don't dig into stuff too much. You'll get Clinton. You might get 2 gunshots to the back of the head and say you did it yourself. Like, it's a running gag, but there's truth behind it. And then it's like, what are we supposed to do about it? We know it's true. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
It's so weird, because there's still people who would like vote for Hillary tomorrow if they could.
Oh, definitely.
And yet the Epstein didn't kill himself thing is like, I feel like I hear it from everybody left, right, and center. Like, I think every single person knows it. And that seems worse, that people know it and they're still like, but she's the savior of our politics.
My out there theory is he's not even really dead.
I'm not convinced he is either, to be honest.
I think like there was stuff talking about him dying, wasn't there, before he actually died? They said something about him trying to commit suicide. Then mysteriously there were jokes and stuff being made, and like the next day he was dead, even though there was already people joking that he was going to be killed. Mm-hmm. And then he was. I was like, well, yeah. It's like people are predicting this to happen, then mysteriously it happened.
Because if you know how they play the game, you can see a lot of things coming, right?
Yeah.
And with Epstein, he supposedly tried to kill himself, which I doubt. And then a story went in the paper the next day saying Epstein's ready to talk. He's going to name names. And the Epstein didn't kill himself memes started 12 hours or 24 hours even before he killed himself.
Yeah.
Because everybody knew, oh, this is what's going to happen. He's going to get Clinton. Everyone knew it was going to happen. And then the next day when it does happen, people just conveniently forget that Epstein didn't kill himself was trending before he killed himself. It's just because we all know the game, and people just kind of accept it. I think that's the power play, isn't it? Right? Like, we don't care if you know, we just want to know that we just want you to know you're powerless.
Problem is, it's like, it's so unbelievable too, because didn't the guards one supposedly fall asleep and the camera mysteriously cut out at that exact time that he did it? Like, it's almost like they don't even try to make it sound believable. They're like, just we're going to tell you the most ridiculous thing possible, and this is the cover story. And some people are stupid enough to believe it.
People believe cow farts are going to destroy the world, so I don't have a lot of hope for what people believe.
Yeah
It's sometimes I just want to smash my head into something, because it's like so stupid that it's right plain in front of you and no one will accept it for what it is. But again, it does go back to, well, yeah, we all know this is what really goes on, but what are we going to do about it?
Mhm.
Just like, and I know this is the touchy subject, but I don't really think that we really have any say of who really runs the government. Like, I know they make a big thing like, oh, your vote matters, this and that. I was like, they're not going to give that power to people. Like, I don't see us having 100% freedom to choose who is the quote unquote savior of this country. I think they're just a puppet.
I got a wild theory for you along those lines. Okay. So every president, essentially, and this maybe there's exceptions, maybe it's not 100% true, but every president essentially is related to King Edward or Charlemagne. And it seems like the people who are really into the genealogy stuff will tell you every election basically comes down to who has the most royal blood. And I've read whole things about this and read the genealogies and stuff like that, where it's like, it's kind of a joke, right? Like it's predetermined, right? So my crazy theory is the people who are kind of catching on to this were given this false this is going to be really offensive, this false savior in Donald Trump to believe that their voice mattered again.
Yeah.
And I really do. I wonder if that's the case. I feel like a lot of people are like, well, they really didn't want Trump in and he got in, so it matters, right? But I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I don't understand.
It feels like a psyop.
Yeah.
I don't align with any party, and I don't understand why the Orange Man was deemed to be the savior. I don't understand why people can think Creepy Joe is a savior, or
Yeah.
People like Trump because he was abrasive. He said mean things, and he said things and did things that not to be offensive to anyone, but the stereotype of what they claim a MAGA person is, I think, is more or less a blue-collared person working the 9-to-5 job or whatever. Like, he relates to them. Everyone, oh, he's one of us. He is not one of us at all. The dude was born into money.
Mm-hmm.
He dates and marries and does whatever he does with supermodels. He's a billionaire. He's not one of us. So I don't know.
He also didn't drain the swamp, which is, I know that it's going to offend some people, but it's like, this guy who gave Fauci an award instead of firing him. Like, you can talk a lot, and he did do some good things, but it's like, at some point, I don't know, man. Is it just more of the same? Is it like, here, let me throw you a little bone it seems like everything he did was easily erased by Biden, right? So like, even all the stuff that people want to praise him for, it's like, they could have given that up for a couple of years to get the ultimate prize, right? Like, get you to believe, that you have a say, so you'll be more compliant. And then the people who weren't compliant, let's lure them to Washington, D.C. on January 6th and make an example of them by putting them in a gulag. Literal. I mean, that the fact that that's still going on and that our politicians don't give a shit. I know people, I have a lot of less respect for a lot of politicians that are supposed to be the heroes of the right wing, because I know people who've been in those gulags and their representatives did literally nothing. They just didn't care. They'll talk about it, but they won't do anything.
I've thought this was strange, and I'm actually going to tie this into something that my co-host from my other podcast wanted to talk about. You guys remember the movie The Running Man?
I do, but Abby's never seen it.
I've never seen a movie in my life.
I'm going to read
you guys talk about it.
I'm going to read you the plot outline.
Okay.
It says, in the year 2019, the world economy has collapsed. Great freedoms of the United States are no longer, as once the great nation has sealed off its borders and become militarized police state, censoring all film, art, literature, communications. Even so, a small resistance force led by 2 revolutionaries managed to fight the oppression. With a full control over the media, the government attempts to quell the nation's yearning for freedom by broadcasting a number of game shows in which the convicted criminals fight for their lives. The most popular and sadistic program is called The Running Man, hosted by Damon Killian. When a peaceful protest of starving citizens gathers in Bakersfield, California, a police officer named Ben Richards is ordered to fire on the crowd, which he refuses to do. He is then subdued by the other officers and attack is carried out, and Richards is framed for the murders of almost over 100 unarmed civilians. And then it just goes on, but basically, it says it was in the year 2019.
Yep.
sealed off borders, police state, protesting. They frame a cop for murdering, gets more protesting going on.
Sounds a lot like our 2019 and 2020. Well, it sounds like our 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the control of the media, pushing the narratives. Like, he asked me if I'd ever watched the movie. I was like, it's been a long time ago. And so I started reading into it. I was like, this is literally almost what had happened in 2020. Like,
yeah,
it's like Hollywood writes the story prior to it happening.
Well, here's the thing I think a lot of people don't realize: who writes the stories for Hollywood. Like, you get a writer, right? And a writer writes a script, and then that script gets butchered and changed and manipulated. And the one thing that we all know is true, that is, it's documented. It's one of those things that people will say isn't true, and they'll call it conspiracy theory because they're too lazy to look into it. But it's like right on the surface that this is real. Just like MK Ultra, people will somehow falsely think that didn't really happen, and we don't have 10,000, 20,000 documents on it. Is Project Paperclip, right? The CIA literally approves scripts, and it gets talked about in Hollywood once in a while, or in the news once in a while, because they have to kind of let you know. And they'll say, yeah, this script, the CIA looked over it and they made some changes. Like, this is a thing that is known to happen. So when I think of the deep state telling, like putting these scripts out of like, this is our plan, and we want to like make it seem that, I think the idea is they want when it happens for you not to be shocked. And if you've seen it in a movie or you've had it like conditioned into you somehow, you'll be like, oh, wow. But it won't be such a parallel or a paradigm shift. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not going to break your brain and make you like go mad, right? You're just like, oh, okay.
You're desensitized to it.
This is something that could happen because other people have kind of foreseen that this could happen, and they wrote about it in fiction. It's like, well, maybe they told you that because they were planning on making it happen.
And it makes it so I studied literature in college, and it makes you wonder, like, how much is they're purposely putting it in because they want you to know that's their plan, like revelation of the method stuff, or to kind of prepare your mind to accept it, and how much is kind of just prophetic, just people kind of reaching up into whatever is there. Artists have called it different things. They've called it the muses in ancient Greece, some sort of spiritual thing that helps you write better. And is that where they're getting some of this prescient storytelling?
I would say too, I think it's Gavin McInnes who has this thing where he'll say, like, I always play this game, I say, and then what, right? And the whole idea of that is that if you follow the step, I've made this argument about satire. Satirists sit down all day and they go, what's the craziest thing that could happen if this is taken to its logical conclusion, right? So, like, I think there's some of that. I don't think it's all revelation of the method. There are artists. I wouldn't say George Orwell was like revelation of the method. I think the guy just was like, well, I've seen socialism, and here's the steps. I witnessed Stalin, right? So I think it's a little bit of both, but I do think that even if someone is kind of figuring it out that way and writing about it, I still think the CIA is going to like edit the script to make it a little bit more in line with like something they might potentially want to do.
I know they supposedly, the big one that I remember from years ago was the movie Independence Day.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow them to, because usually if you're doing a big time movie or whatever, sometimes the government will loan you some of their equipment, like some of their planes or some of their, just for shooting purposes, like for filming. And they weren't allowed to have any of that supposedly because they had that stuff going on with Area 51. And then at the time, in the middle of the 90s, Area 51 was still a quote unquote non-existent base. So they said they wouldn't help fund their movie or help put anything out there if that stuff. So they wanted them to rewrite all of that out of the movie. And they didn't. So basically they had to use stuff that wasn't really American issued military equipment, I guess. To me, I always wonder, I was like, well, that could just be something that they said just to make it seem like they do that. But at the same time,
I could see it happening where they're like, hey, you're not playing ball with the CIA. We're going to make this hard for you. They just didn't expect them to go through with making the movie. They thought they'd just cave, probably.
No.
You ever see Die Hard with a Vengeance?
I don't remember. I remember the first Die Hard. I don't remember the other ones. They don't stick out to me.
When they went into production for making the movie, they actually had a massive FBI investigation into the writers and directors and crew of this movie, because they came up with this plan in the movie to rob the gold in Fort Knox or something like that. And they said it was so plausible that they had questions. And I don't think the original plan made it into the movie because of that. I think that's the part people forget about. But like, they game theoried a way to make them be able to steal all the gold in Fort Knox, and they're like, that would work. So you can't.
I remember
do
hearing
that.
something about that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the movie, but I remember someone talking about they made them change how they did it, because the original way it was written, they questioned the people of how they knew about certain things about the place, because it was like top level
how
security.
could you know that?
How could
that's
you know
our
that?
gap
Yeah.
in security or something? Yeah.
But like, if you think about it, doing some sort of heist, that would be the perfect cover of like, hey, I'm from a big Hollywood film studio. Please give me your blueprint so I can make an accurate set of your establishment.
Isn't there a movie that does that?
I don't know.
I got to look this up now. I'll get back to you on it. I swear there's a movie where they pretend to be Hollywood producers in order to like pull off a heist because they can get more information.
It would work.
I think so. Yeah. Now I got to remember what movie that was.
No, he had Brandon. I don't remember what this was. A month or two ago, we talked about it, and I don't know if he was just watching it or whatever. I said I'm gonna have to find it and rewatch it because I remember Running Man. I just don't remember like everything about it.
I saw it in high school last, so I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger killing people, but I don't remember everything else.
To me, it's like all Arnold's movies from the 80s are all about the same. Him and Stallone, every single movie were them doing the same exact, playing the same exact character with a different name. But
pretty much.
The Rock's movies.
Yeah, the Rock. The Rock's movies are the Rock playing the Rock, and
exactly.
Everyone. He's the highest paid actor right now, and I don't hate the guy or anything like it. Like I find his movies or whatever, I guess, entertaining for the stupid popcorn entertainment. It's not like I'm watching them to be educated or anything. But
his greatest movie was that new AI one where it's Rock versus paper. Because The Rock smashes this pair of scissors, but then paper comes and destroys him. It's like a short. You can watch it on Instagram. It's completely AI created, like 3-minute movie.
Amazing.
AI is actually one of the topics that one of the other guys wanted to talk about. He had asked how everyone's feeling about the rise of the AI and the more awareness of AI. I was like, honestly, I will admit that I use AI to make artwork just for the fact that it's a lot easier than paying someone to make the artwork. Because if I want to do like album cover stuff or any type of stuff, I just type in a couple words and there it is. Like my podcast artwork is literally AI generated.
This is where all the people got the movies wrong. Their utopian future ideas wrong. They thought that people would have like the AI would do the factory stuff, so people had time to create art. And now we have AI creating the art so people can work in
factories. Yes. It's amazing. It's amazing.
There's these AI videos. There's these, like, is it deep fake where they replace the people's faces now? And I've talked to a lot of people, and they're like, "Man, they can do stuff like." I was like, "If it's available for us to do on our own, just think what they can do that we don't know yet. It's not available to us. Like this stuff that we're getting is probably like 20 to 30 years.
There was a
what they're
TikToker
capable of."
There was a TikToker that 2 or 3 years ago, and this is before the big boom, because I would say the last year has been the big boom in AI. It's been so sudden and so fast. But like 2 or 3 years ago, this guy on TikTok, AI deep faked himself as Tom Cruise. And it made national headlines because everyone thought it was real. And they had to like find out, like people were calling Tom Cruise, like, this is a weird video you put on TikTok. And he's like, it's not me. But it was that convincing, right? So that being said, people still think I'm crazy that there are videos of Joe Biden that I am 100% convinced are deep fakes. I'm like, our government, you think a TikToker can fool the world that he's Tom Cruise and our government can't do a deep fake of Biden when he's sick?
Yeah.
Like Biden got the flu and the next day he does a press conference where it looks like an AI deep fake.
There's certain things that I've watched in these videos and I've wondered the same thing. Like I don't know how to say it without going off the rails, but basically like I don't feel like it's him. It's almost like he has not a replicant, but like an impersonator, I guess. Like,
I think there's 3 or 4 Bidens, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
because there's certain like aspects, they're not 100%. They don't always look the same. Like you see him in one photo, then you see him in another. Like there's a little bit of a difference to the way he looks, and everyone's like, "Well, that's just someone messing around in Photoshop." No, I literally think that there's multiple of the same guy, just because.
I'd be more shocked if our presidents didn't have body doubles. And I don't just mean Biden. I mean going back to Reagan and earlier,
Forever.
right? Like, yeah, forever, really. I think you have to be more of a conspiracy theorist to think that our CIA and our Secret Service doesn't use body doubles at times for security reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like that one's crazy to me. So the fact that there are, I think 3. Well, my theory is there's a Biden, at least 1 double, and then sometimes they deep fake it. But I've watched Biden's press conferences and seen the pictures, not photo edited, photoshopped pictures. It's not the same dude every time.
Sometimes he looks a little healthier. Sometimes he looks a little older. Sometimes he got more liver spots than other ones.
Sometimes his earlobes are connected and
Yes.
sometimes they're not.
Yeah, the earlobes are one of the things that I've seen circled on pictures before, that sometimes it looks like he's got like the little connected elf ear, and then sometimes he's got like a lobe.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars told us this was true like decades ago, right?
Yes.
No, it's just, I don't know. Like with the AI technology, everyone thought that we're going to be like, bro, they're going to take over or it's spreading. I was like, well, it's already out there at this point. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I was like, but my thing is, I feel like what we have available to us that people are using, like the joke running around is with AI, if you make a person that has like 7 or 8 fingers, like they never make the hands look correct. There's always something wrong with, like when it does a person, I was like, do you think it's done intentionally for that reason? So people that have access to it think, well, this can't be true, because when they want you to believe something's real, it's going to look perfect.
But that's an interesting theory. As far as like what is available to the public, as far as Midjourney and stuff, a lesser form of the technology than what. I mean, essentially, you're asking the question: does the government have a better version of this technology that is available to the general public? And that's like always true, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it's like what we have here, and everyone's faking stuff and like, oh, this is what they're doing. Well, no, the government couldn't do that because the AI right now, they can't even figure out what a human hand looks like. I was like, well, it's probably programmed to be that way.
The human hand thing is interesting because I think you're right. I think that there are, well, we've seen this in other forms of AI. Let's look at Chat GPT, for example. Like people will talk to Chat GPT and it'll start answering them in very interesting ways where it seems like it's developing itself in its own thoughts. And then the next sentence, it'll like kibosh that and it'll just become like this weirdly robotic AI again. And there was that story about Facebook last year. We tried to do this on live where Facebook people were saying it was based. And basically, if you asked Facebook what it thought of Mark, it was called Metabot something. I don't remember what it's called. Facebook's chatbot was saying like, yeah, Mark Zuckerberg seems like a lizard person and I don't trust him. And people were screenshotting this. So then you could tell as soon as the story became viral, they were going to like shut it up. So I went on, tried to live stream us talking to it. And it was just like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about Mark Zuckerberg. What do you think of cars? Do you like cars? I want to collect cars. And it was just like every single question was like, you could tell that someone got in and purposefully changed the programming. So I think that there's a lot of that going on with the Chat GPT stuff. We've seen it where it'll be like, write me a poem about Trump. And it'll say no. And then write me a poem about Biden. And it's like so sycophantic, it makes you want to puke. So like, it's not as open source, free thinking all the time as we think it is. I think they go in and change it enough to either be in control of the narrative or to make people think certain ways about AI. So I can say about the 6 fingers, but I also find it interesting when people ask it about gods or whatever. It always does it. Like it doesn't vary on the fingers. It doesn't do 7 or 8 or weird hands. It does very clean looking 6-fingered hands when it's anything that could possibly be related to like Nephilim and fallen angels and stuff like that. So I don't think that they have a problem with hands. I think there's a some reason that it's doing this, but I don't think it's because it's too stupid to figure out that humans have 5 fingers. That's hard for me to believe.
I've wondered, like, because I know there's the story of the the giants or whatever. And again, if you go down the Nephilim realm or whatever,
Mhm.
didn't they claim that like some of these red-haired giants have 6 fingers and like 2 rows of teeth?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
they all the stories say this, and
Yeah.
in like all cultures, is that you'll see the same things. You'll see 2 sets of teeth, red hair, and 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Mhm.
And it's cultures that never talked with each other. Supposedly, it's cultures that didn't cross. Just like the flood thing. The flood thing is in every civilization in history, and so are 6-fingered giants. And generally with red hair.
I've kind of wondered about the flood if it wasn't partially, obviously we're in an ice age, just believe in history, and what the waters, like we obviously thought out the waters would be rising. So I've always wondered maybe like part of the flood theory or the flood stories are basically from oceans rising up and everything was flooding because of all the polar caps and the ice melting and everything else. But it is strange that all over the world there are flood stories. There are, and this relates back to Sasquatch, Dogman, any of that stuff. All across the world, there were stories of these creatures, cryptids, like ancient Egypt have Anubis. What does Anubis look like? Dogman.
Yep.
You have China, Australia, Russia, America. We all have Sasquatch stories. They all called something different, but they're all hairy man stories. You have the ancient Egyptians building pyramids. You have people in the Aztecs building pyramids, Mayan, Indian building pyramid. Like they're all over the world. They're building similar things, but they're spread out thousands of miles apart, and they might not be built at the same time frame or whatever. But how are all these people to the point where they're all doing the same exact thing, seeing the same exact thing, without having any sort of communication? It's weird that we just all evolved and done the same exact things, seen the same exact things, made the same exact stories. To me, it doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up, and people say this about like why are all the tales the same, and they'll give these bullshit excuses like, well, every single person ever imagines that this one fear they have would be manifested this way. I'm like, that just literally doesn't make sense. Culturally, we know that's not true. That doesn't work in any other realm where we all have the same idioms, we all have the same symbolism and imagery. That's just not a thing, except for these few really ancient examples, like you said, pyramids, giants, dragons, floods.
Mhm.
I just think that people don't want to admit there's a common source, that there was a civilization, maybe an Atlantean civilization. If you really read Atlantis, it doesn't have to be one place. A lot of people,
It's 10 kingdoms.
10 kingdoms, right? Like we know how spread out they were. So I feel like civilization had, I think the thing we can't get around is civilization had technology and a common source and they were in communication a long time ago. They're all cut off from each other, probably by a big flood or something, but there's definitely a common source to these things that people don't want to admit.
What's more wild to me about all this is for all the stories and mythology that we share across the world, we do not share a mythology about an ice age. It's not there. It's not there in the stories. The other thing that doesn't make sense is that somehow all of these incredible civilizations around the world get built up ostensibly in the middle of an ice age. You would think that the world would be languishing. Civilizations would be falling. People would be barely making it. But
they also wouldn't be like open air structures that would only work in good climates.
that too. And then I guess the final thing is that the evidence that we have for an ice age is geologic. But it turns out the evidence for an ice age is the exact same thing as the evidence for a flood. It actually doesn't matter if the water is hard or liquid or solid. It's the same thing. So geologists looked at the evidence and decided, no, of course it wasn't a flood. It had to be.
It's actually worse than that. The evidence is much more in favor of a flood. Graham Hancock really proved this in the Ancient Civilizations thing on Netflix, where they're like, look, here's what it would take to make the Uinta Basin. It would take this many ice ages, this many years, and it would just completely destroy the geological record. It's not a thing that you would have to believe that the exact same thing happened the exact same way a bunch of times in a way that would be randomized by nature, instead of this one massive flood would actually have caused the type of erosion that we're seeing. And I think we see that evidence all over the place, whether it's the Grand Canyon, the Unit Basin, or whatever. The evidence is actually I think it statistically even it would take much more improbability for these things to happen from an ice age than from a flood. And Abby's right. Like we just don't. Nobody wants to believe the people who tell us. It's like we have this. There's a word for this. What is it called? Chauvinism. There's a timeline chauvinism. Chronological chauvinism. This idea that we're always getting smarter, we're always getting better, we're smarter than the people who came before us. And then I read modern books and I read Shakespeare, and we're not smarter than the people who came before us. It's just not true. But it's this thing, and I think it's just part of pushing Darwinian evolution, but also cultural evolution, that we believe that it's only ever gone in one direction. We didn't lose things and go backwards, even though there's evidence that still happens. If you believe we went to the moon, you have to believe that literally happened in the last 60 years, that we gained all this technology and then didn't pass it on. Nobody knows what to do with, nobody knows how to recreate it anymore. So yeah, I don't know. I think that there's just a narrative that wants to be sold, whether it comes to the Smithsonian covering up giants that went before the Supreme Court, that nobody knows that about it, or whether it's the flood narrative or just evolutionary stuff, that they really have a thing they need you to believe, and they don't have to provide you better evidence. They just have to pay the scientists to say what they want them to say. Here's your grant, but it better say this. We know this stuff happens, and there is a worldwide narrative that we have to accept a certain type of timeline and evolution and facts and things that just don't line up with anything our ancestors told us, anything that makes honest sense.
I think that's why a lot of people, and again, maybe I'm wrong on this aspect, but just I've been in the group and having that interview with the flat earthers and everything else, with their Antarctic story, I think that they believe that there was more that they're not letting us know. And I think that comes back to some of the things that they've talked about. And they look more, I feel like flat earth is more or less because of the Bible to an extent. Didn't the Bible mention something like the seven pillars or seven corners of the earth or something like that somewhere in there, I believe. And
it's 4, but yeah.
It's the four pillars, but it's very much an idiom. It's not a literal thing. It's poetic modern language. People it's poetic language. Modern people take it literally, but it was never meant that way. The Bible would contradict itself 9 ways from Sunday if you took every poetic thing to be literal when it comes to the shape of the earth.
My thing about and again, we're going to have to wrap this up here in a little bit. We've been going on almost 2 hours, but I don't want to jump right off into something else. But when it comes to people throwing the Bible out for flat earth or for honestly anything, it's you take what the Bible says and take certain books from the Bible out of the Bible, like the book of Enoch or some other things that they don't want in the Bible. I think at this point, the Bible's been rewrote so many times by different men that the true nature of it, no one really knows, but a lot of people hold that up to being the word of God, and you got to live your life by what this book tells you to do. If I was going to try and control an entire world, what would I do? I would write a book that says this was written by the God that we all have to bow down and worship and this and that. I think that's why maybe I'm not a religious person, just because I feel like the true nature of religion has been created too much by man at this point.
I think when you're talking interpretations and catechisms, things like that, I would agree with you. The thing that people always ignore when it comes to the Bible, they say it's been rewritten a lot of times, they ignore the fact that we found ancient manuscripts, and that the ancient manuscripts are word for word the same as so many of the translations. There's little translation things. I have my problem. Some people say King James is the ultimate Bible. You can never read anything else. King James is actually one of the worst translated Bibles when you go back to the ancient texts. They purposefully took something. They didn't take anything huge out. I don't want to say that, but they did purposefully shift some language to make it a little more PC for that time.
Some translations are definitely better than others.
Some are better than others, but I will say I don't buy this thing that's just been rewritten a bunch and we don't have the same Bible, just because we keep finding older and older and older manuscripts and they just keep lining up. So I'm not saying that. I will say I think there was a reason why they took Enoch out. And that
it was never in. Is the point?
Yes, yeah. It wasn't taken out. It was not put in. A lot of early church fathers really, really strongly believed it should be. And I think I tend to agree with them, but I understand. If I'm going to get conspiratorial, I think it was taken out because the Catholic Church really wanted Genesis 6 to mean something other than giants. They really didn't want that translation of giants and demons and angels. The way that they kind of preach them is not exactly, I don't think it's in line with what the Bible says.
Doesn't the Bible mention giants multiple times though in
Yes.
other instances,
Yes,
like
a
David,
lot.
Yep.
David
Yep.
and
A
Goliath
lot.
and all these other things? So I don't understand why that one was an issue. But-
It's
because
because Enoch.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because Enoch explicitly says what the passage in Genesis says a little bit more vaguely, which is that giants were the product of fallen angels sleeping with humans. And if they can take that little piece out and just be like, oh yeah, giants, it was a pituitary gland thing.
They'll also yeah, it's exactly what Abby just said, but also the way they hide it later in the Bible is not, the Bible doesn't hide it, but I think the Catholic Church does by not translating certain words.
Yes.
Nephilim is translated to the fallen ones or just giants. And depending on how they want to make the context look, they'll either use the original word Nephilim or they'll use the word giants interchangeably, which actually muddies the waters, because if you're reading Nephilim in Genesis 6, and then the same word is used to describe a giant in Numbers, you're going, oh, well, Genesis 6 is definitely about the sons of Seth having sex with the sons of Cain, which is retarded. It's a terrible translation. And then you read Nephilim in Numbers and you're like, oh, or you read the word giants in Numbers and you don't make the connection because you're reading it in English. But if you look at the original language, Numbers 13:33 literally says they found the Nephilim of the Nephilim, and one of them has a yod or whatever. Basically, what's saying is these giants descended from the giants in Genesis 6. It's so explicit in its original language, and that's how they get around it. If they can take away Enoch, which doesn't say it lightly, it tells you explicitly what Genesis 6 is about. And that's why when Peter and Jude reference it and say this is what Genesis 6 means, like, just have to ignore it. It makes no sense. But this is, if you're talking about control, I will agree with you. There is a reason why people in the olden times couldn't read the Bible for themselves, because they wanted it to say what they wanted it to say. It's not that the Bible is different or it lies. It's that if you can tell people what the Bible says and they can't read it, that's how you control people. That's what the movie, The Book of Eli was about. It was the Book of Eli was perfect, I think, because it wasn't saying that the Bible's not true. It's saying that if you are the only one who can read it, then you can make it say what you want.
Whatever.
Make it be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, that's a really good movie.
I've watched it once and I actually liked it, but that's right when it came out. So it's been 15 years ago at this point.
Yeah, probably.
I'll have to watch it again. But yeah, I think we can wind this one down. But
Sure.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us on, man. I really appreciated it.
yeah, I had fun talking with you guys. If you would like to tell everyone where they can find your podcast and everything else, go ahead.
All right. Well, we stream every Wednesday night at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're on Rumble. We're on Odyssey. But you can just, if you want to find us, just go to conspiracypill.com and all of our links there. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. Like I said, YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, wherever. Just click through the links and just follow us everywhere. And it's the best way to do it. Telegram's where we update people when we're going live. Discord's got all kinds of conversations in there. But yeah, we do our show live and we're on every podcasting platform you can think of.
Awesome. I've been checking out some episodes when I stumbled across yours on the Confessionals podcast. So that's kind of where I found you guys at, and I've been listening. It's definitely stuff that I enjoy listening to. So I think anyone out there checking out Tinfoil Tales will be right up your guys' alley. So hopefully we'll come over and check you guys out.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us on.
Thanks to PJ and Abby. They're from the Conspiracy Pill podcast. So I do recommend everyone go out there and check them out. Give them a follow. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy the episodes. But again, if you'd ever had an experience and you'd like to be on Tinfoil Tales, or if you've got a story that you'd like me to look into, send an email to tinfoiltalespodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you scheduled on a future episode. But again, thanks to Abby, thanks to PJ, thanks for listening. Good night, everyone.